right, good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, December 23rd, 2015, and this is Before the First Cup of Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is 48 degrees and partly cloudy here in upstate New York. Still looks pretty nice, feeling kind of spring. And we actually saw a robin this morning. Yes, a robin. Now, normally we don't see robins until March. So I think they might be a little confused or never left, but not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. I hope the little robins have some place to go if there's a cold snap. So where do we leave off yesterday? We had a Ghost of Christmas Past on yesterday. It was Before the First Cup with Jules and Zori, titled Google Project Loon Frequency Dangers with a question mark. Oh, hold on, and I have speakers on. There we go. Yeah, I don't know. We talked about Google Loon. We had mentioned it a couple times before in regards to, these companies wanting to take over the world by launching internet satellites and balloons all over it so you can make sure you have connectivity 24/7, even if you're in the African jungles. And that is the plan, right? We've talked about the Gartner quadrant for the growth of cell phones. And I mean, right now we are like on the blossoming of the cell phone in the third world as wearables are now ramping up in the Western world. Of course, wearables, we have good old DARPA's Regina Duggan, very involved in that, now being a part of Google. And I don't remember what her department is, but she's the one that does the what they call moonshots. She's the one that they've tasked with coming up with projects that have no chance in hell at ever succeeding. And if they do succeed, it's going to be like one of the most amazing things ever because it was such a 1 in a million shot. But they give her a lot of money to pull that off. So anyway, I want to continue a little bit more on Google Project Loon. I really didn't have a lot of a show put together for today because, hey, guess what? There's a holiday coming and all my family is arriving tomorrow and I still have half a house to clean and laundry to do. So that's all I did yesterday. Two notes I want to make before we get into the show today. For anyone that didn't know, April and Verstein's last show is going to be this next coming Sunday. They both have decided that doing a show is a lot of time and effort, and they've been doing it for a long time. Long before they came to UCY, they had their own. They had their show on Blog Talk that they were hosting on their own. But Verstein has a budding music career, and April has the kids, and it's just getting a little too much to have to get something together every week and edit it. So I want you guys to at least wish them a fine farewell. So I don't know, we might still run them in that slot. I have lots of shows that we can run. We can run replays. They had some really great shows, especially a lot of stuff about vaccine damaged. I mean, they have a lot of firsthand experience on that. But anyway, I want to say thank you to April and Verstein for all the time and effort that they put in to always have us good, informed shows and guests and lots of information. And now the second announcement, we found out on Sunday on Shally's show that Clint Richardson was also leaving broadcasting. He is working on a documentary and a pamphlet and some other things, and he needs to free up some time. And trust me, I struggle with this. This has been now going on 4 years. I still struggle with this, and I'm not sure what to do. But hey, 4 years later, I'm still here. Clint has to free up some time to work on other projects. On Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday maybe, Monday. This week, I heard it. He had his last show on RBN, and he is signed off. But Clint came to the rescue. Clint has given us permission to run his archives. So someone else leaves, and we can help them stay on the air. So I think it's going to take me a while because I'm going to have to cut some of them because his had commercials that came out that he edited out. So I got to pad them with a little bit of filler so they fit in the slot. But I think we're going to bring Clint back probably in April and Verstein slot once I get this all settled after the holidays. So Clint will then follow Hal Anthony. So I think those will be a good match. I think it'll give us a little bit of mix up, and then Brandon Turberville has a list. I don't know. There's probably 5 or 6 new shows that he needs me to spend some time looking at. So after the first of the year, also we'll see how that all goes. So there was my update. I have automation coming. I've been working long and hard. We have like 6 automation projects, and the more I can automate, the more other stuff I can do and keep doing the radio network. So that's kind of the big push there. All right. So anyway, let's take a look where we left off yesterday. So we titled the show Google Project Loon Frequency Dangers. So also I want to wish Clint happy trails and good luck on his projects as well. I don't know. It'll be good. I haven't heard a lot of Clint's shows. Every once in a while I'd flip over to RBN if I was hanging around and wanted to hear something at that time. But he's been doing shows for quite a number of years, so there's a massive archive there for us, for those of us who haven't heard him. All right, one of the things about Google Project Loon, this is what we discovered, and then I found out more after the show. So Google Project Loon is being launched January 1st, that story said, that we read yesterday, and they are launching it on balloons, and they're going to be cell towers in the sky that operate near the terahertz bandwidth. And one of the things that this individual in the article I read yesterday out of the Monterey Herald mentioned was EMF diseases, EMF related diseases, and how up near the terahertz level, that type of frequency can actually, and it's been shown, can actually unzip DNA. And, you know, I brought up something during the show yesterday where I've seen that term before. Unzipping DNA has been done in the CRISPR with the Cas9 technology, which is that newfangled, you know, they're going to give her the Woman of the Year or Science Project of the Year for that Jennifer Dauda, that invented that technology. But it basically allows them to go into an organism, any living organism, take the DNA, and you have it's double-stranded DNA is what we have in our bodies, and it takes those 2 strands, it goes bzoop, and splits them in half. And then they can take anything that they've created, any type of new gene sequence, and they give it what they want it to match itself to. So now this new gene sequence is looking at its little, you know, where do I go card, and it's like, oh, look, there's the match. I go and zip myself right there. Zip. And then it starts to replicate and spread all throughout the body. Well, how interesting that the CRISPR technology to insert and genetically modify organisms with the CRISPR-Cas9 technology, they need to unzip the genes first before they can insert the new genes. And then we find out this Project Loon that really has no FCC major oversight, that really has kind of been slip-willied back in the back door. There hasn't really been any type of public debate on this. We don't even have it in any type of law. And we're going to look at this. Zori brought up this question yesterday, and it's a very good question. And I found an article that says we still don't have laws. Is your property above your property your property? Will you be able to be protected from things flying over your property? And once these high-frequency towers get launched into the sky, there will be nowhere to get away from this type of electromagnetic radiation. I mean, it's already everywhere, but they do have rules, right? We read they have rules for cell towers within, you know, so many miles of a school or, you know, residential area or whatever. So, and then, oh, I just spilled my coffee on my pants. I don't do that too often. We discovered, too, looking at the 2.4 gigahertz range yesterday. That's where your microwave lives and your Wi-Fi in your house. And that just reminds me, there was a new Wi-Fi story I might have to dig up to do later. That 2.4 gigahertz cooks things, right? Put it in your microwave, turn it on, and what happens to anything that is in between the 2.4 gigahertz waves? Oh, it cooks. What do you think is happening in schools, let's say? That really worries me because wireless is one of those things that's ubiquitous everywhere right now. I mean, it has been, but over the last few years, it's wireless everything. And you got your kids sitting in the middle of 32 wireless signals. We did frequencies back, maybe 6-7 months ago, and we started really to talk about all the different energy levels and how damaging this must be for our cells. And then we also looked at, I mentioned him again yesterday, that music professor that had worked with a cancer researcher at his university, and they started at ground zero with frequencies and worked their way up, and they found that there were exact frequencies that could shatter certain and different types of cancers. I don't remember what he called that term, but he said it was the same sort of thing as when you can flick a glass and you can get its note, and then an opera singer can hit that note and it shatters. It does the same thing to the cancer cells, the resonant frequency. When they find that resonant frequency, I don't know what my resonant frequencies are within my body, but, the big concern is now that we have this electromagnetic radiation everywhere in our environment and adding more every single day. Don't think now with all these drones that are getting ready to be launched, that also was happening in 2016 between Amazon, Walmart. I haven't seen if Walmart has their application in yet, but I know that they said that they were interested. Pudgy's Pizza. I'm sure that they're going to have pizza delivery zones. Tom's Tacos. It's going to be the land of the drones here soon. That's all you're going to hear in the backyard. They have to be communicating in some way as well. I don't know. I don't even know how they're going to control those drones. We read a while back that NASA and Verizon, if you missed that show, look it up. NASA and Verizon were partnering to be the quote-unquote FAA for drones. So the Verizon cell towers were going to be monitoring the air. They were doing air traffic control, monitoring the air traffic on the ground, and NASA was going to be triangulating with the satellites to make sure we didn't have any mid-air crashes. So, take this up another step. Now Google's getting in the game with more cell phone towers, high-frequency cell phone towers floating on balloons in the sky. All right, so let's go to some new stuff now that I didn't know yesterday. This is a story out of Google Corporate from 4 days ago. Google's latest FCC filing hints, and actually, I don't know. It says Google Corporate, but I don't think this is from Google Corporate. It's called 9 to 5 Google. 9-2, the word 2, 5, Google.com. Google's latest FCC filing hints at a more extensive Project Loon testing in the United States. And it's big, like weathered hot air balloons. And I will drop this in chat after I read it so you can see it's got a full picture of the balloon. According to a recent filing with the FCC, Google is looking to test something with experimental radios that use a wireless spectrum in all 50 states and in Puerto Rico. Good old Puerto Rico. You want it to be our 51st state. You even have somebody in Congress that represents you and your own senator and I don't know. Do they have someone in both the House and the Senate? I think they do. But you also get all of our problems and you get Google Loon. The details on these tests are incredibly sparse at this point, but Google wants to start the process on January 1st and test for 24 months. A 2-year test. I don't know about you, but I do a lot of beta testing. Right? I am beta tester extraordinaire. We do a lot of our own development here, and we usually have 5 or 6 things going all at one time. So I test shit and have it running on one machine or another to see how it works and see how it crashes. I get that you need to test stuff, but I'm going to tell you something else. I don't run beta tests for 2 years. That's not a beta test. That's like a test already done under the guise, like pretending that it's a test. A 2-year test. And you know what? Guess what? The FCC filing really has been majorly redacted in the version released to the public. But there are 2 possibilities as to what Google could be referring to in its requests. The most likely of the 2, however, appears to be its Project Loon's internet balloons, and I'm pretty certain that this is what this is. Project Loon, of course, is Google X's project that it hopes will allow it to provide internet to rural and less developed areas with solar-powered balloons that fly between 60 and 90,000 feet up in the air, which is way higher than an airplane, right? I mean, 30,000 feet is typically what you're in a plane. And I know we did a story on this probably at the beginning of the year, and they really were salivating over the African continent and how they're just all starting to come online with cell phones. There's no infrastructure there to be able to run cable or fiber, so it's all got to be wireless. Okay, you want to launch the African continent or the country of India or the country of China, like any of these places, or up in the Himalayas where they don't have anything. You want all these people and have this exponential growth that you've been experiencing to continue. That you need to have something like this. Now, I always thought satellite internet worked okay. We had 3G, 4G, but again, what is that doing to us? You know, that's the big question. And we have some, actually have a couple stories here on that. So let me not dawdle so I can get through all this. Anyway, it says Google's Project Loon, of course, is Google X's project that it hopes will allow it to provide internet to rural and less developed areas with solar power balloons that fly between 60 and 90,000 feet. Google recently announced that it would begin testing Loon in Indonesia. Oh, yeah, where they have lots of human rights. Indonesia, where they have the kimono dragon that eat people. You know, my daughter asked me once about the kimono dragon, and there was a James Bond movie when I was a kid that had the kimono dragon with the evil villain, and I had looked it up because of that a long time ago. But I said to my daughter, I said, I think the kimono dragon lives in Indonesia, where they lock people up and put them on death row for life and feed them to the kimono dragons. And yes, Indonesia is the one who has the kimono dragons. Anyway, Google recently announced, and they put people in jail for like bogus drug trafficking laws, and then execute them, even when other countries are trying to like save them. I don't know. We've covered on the Pigmine videos. I actually built a playlist for Indonesian death row. I think I'm actually just going to change it to Indonesia, but it's what they're famous for me. Death row and kimono dragons. All right, Indonesia next year, in partnership with the major wireless carriers in the country. That's where they'll be testing Project Loon. So Indonesia and the United States. There are several pieces of evidence in the FCC filing that hint at it being related to Project Loon. And the first is the name of the filing. Astroteller. Now, Astroteller, doesn't that make you think of like astrology, astronomy, being able to look into your crystal ball and see the future, or being able to look into your crystal ball and see something that others don't see? That's why that name scared me. Astroteller. So the first is the name on the filing, Astroteller, who is essentially the quote-unquote head of Google X's moonshots. Now, weren't we just talking about moonshots and Regina Duggan and all the projects that are like completely crazy but might actually turn out to be something? Yeah. So the filing also mentions how these tests are a continuation of tests it previously conducted in the United States. And in the past, Google has conducted tests with Loon in a small town in Nevada. Now, I did not know about that one. It remains to be seen as to why Google wants to test Loon extensively in the United States when it has said previously that underdeveloped countries are its primary target with the project. And that's what I said. When we first read about this, it was all about the African continent, India, all these places with extreme, China, not that, but maybe they'll help Chinese get around censorship. I don't know. But it was about all these countries with huge populations that didn't have a cable plant infrastructure, that didn't have fiber, that it was next to impossible to be able to lay any of that stuff. So your only other option is some sort of high-speed, reliable wireless. And they were salivating. But this says they don't understand why now, all of a sudden, the primary target is the United States. Well, if we go back to the story we read yesterday, that actually got into the different types of frequencies. And like I said, the close to terahertz frequency, I actually looked up because that story, though it was from a somewhat, the Monterey Herald, it's a mainstream paper out of California. It sure looks like it to me. They got sports news, it's a standard newspaper out of California. And it talked about terahertz frequencies unzipping DNA, and I really wanted to find the documentation for that. Well, I found it yesterday. Do you know where they did that research? They did that research at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. Lawrence Livermore was the one that discovered that terahertz frequencies could unzip DNA. Well, we know the history of Lawrence Livermore, and we were talking yesterday about the Manhattan Project and all the horrible experimentation that's been done on humans by the government. Oh, that Lawrence Livermore. Yes. And then we find out, too, now Google's getting bitch slapped. That was bitch slapping. Google's getting bitch slapped because of all their lobbying dollars, more than any other corporation ever, in Congress and the House. And, we've been discovering there's like this revolving door now between not only the White House, but DARPA and Google. It's really horrifying. It's horrifying. Their tentacles have spread far and wide, and now their tentacles are going into the sky to pull the top of the bag closed. So, this person writing the story is scratching their head. It remains to be seen as to why Google wants to test Loon extensively in the United States when it is said previously that underdeveloped countries are its primary target with the project. Now, two other things that just happened within the last 2 weeks. We had Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, right, launches rocket in Southwest Texas. The one that goes up and comes back down and lands. And then yesterday, Elon Musk, SpaceX, and remember, they're all in. Amazon has built a parallel cloud for the alphabet agencies, okay? Amazon also got their FCC approval, even though they didn't want to give it, to start doing their drone delivery. Elon Musk is part of SpaceX. When they first were doing their testing, Elon Musk was leasing space, and I have not, you know what, out of all of the rich tech billionaires, I would have to say that Elon Musk is probably my favorite. He still scares me, but I think he's a little bit like me. Like, he actually sees what's coming, and he's trying to use some of his influence, like that group we talked about last week, where he's investing $1 billion to try to stop artificial intelligence from being used for evil. But Elon Musk, when he was trying to launch his SpaceX, NASA was actually getting rid of the space shuttle program. That was our one and only way to ferry stuff up to the International Space Station and back. And now, because Obama discontinued that program, we have to depend upon countries like China, Russia, India. I don't know if actually India took anything up for us, but I know Russia's tried. We've had a few rockets blow up, and they've done a few private rocket launches for supplies as well. But Elon Musk stepped in, and he actually leased space from NASA in one of their facilities after they had to let all those people go that had been there for 30 years, right? Look how horrible. All these senior aeronautic space engineers. And Elon took on some of their employees, and he's in an information sharing partnership with NASA. Now that, like I said, I like Elon Musk, but when I read that, I was like, that's odd. Now, for the second time, we see a private corporation within the United States working and sharing with NASA. Now, NASA, X-37B, that was the baby space shuttle. The baby space shuttle, after Obama killed the space shuttle program, which I got to tell you was very near and dear to my heart. Space shuttle Challenger blew up on my birthday, the day I graduated high school, my 18th birthday. It was very sad. That went on while I was growing up. That shuttle program meant so much to me, and when he killed it, he stabbed me. You know what? There was no reason to kill that shuttle, but that little baby shuttle, the X-37B, that was supposed to ride in the belly of the space shuttle and be how they would be ferrying supplies to the International Space Station. After they got rid of the space shuttle and they ferried it off to the Smithsonian to go sit in a museum for the rest of its life, that X-37B from NASA got transferred to the Air Force and then went on a secret mission for a year or two. I think it's been on 3 or 4 missions now. Flying in the sky as an unmanned aerial vehicle. I think they were doing, unmanned training. But the issue with that is that it was secret ops. It was doing research for unmanned aerial vehicles. It was part of the Department of Defense. And it was tied in with DARPA. NASA is the white side of the yin and the yang of DARPA. They're both doing the same research, just NASA is the public face of some of the happy research that DARPA does on the dark side. There's so many connections there. So when I see that we have 2 large corporations, we have SpaceX and we have Verizon. Remember, Verizon working with NASA for doing air traffic control for the drones. It's a little bit disturbing. All right, look at, we have actually this article at the very bottom has the full redacted FCC document from Google as well. Anyway, so it's befuddling this author as to why now Google is all of a sudden going to focus their primary target on the United States when it originally was all about third world countries. And one idea they had is that Google could have is that should an area in the United States suffer from some sort of natural disaster. Oh! Loon could theoretically be used to help provide a communications platform for citizens and officials. Oh. There's also a small possibility that Google could potentially be looking to test its Project Fi service more extensively with this FCC request. This, however, seems unlikely as Fi is already readily available to customers and is not a Google X project. And I believe Fi is Google Wi-Fi, right? All right, so I don't think we're going to read the FCC, but I'm going to open this in a new window. All right. I got to tell you guys, since it's warmed up here and like we have robins out thinking it's spring, I definitely can feel like my allergies, whatever is outside right now, feels like it literally is spring, like the beginning of spring. Wow, this is a great blog. The pictures up top are huge. You guys want to check this out and stay up with everything Google. I don't really know who writes this. It says it's Google Corporate. Google Corporate. So this looks like it comes out of Google, but it was being written like it was an outside news agency, but it's the number 9, then the word 2, T-O, the number 5, google.com, 925, google.com. All right. Let's move on. So one more thing. I have Project Loon, how it flies, navigating with the winds. There's an illustration showing these balloons up in the stratosphere. Looks like the ones that are a little bit lower go west to east as far as the jet stream. The ones way up higher go east to west. Project Loon balloons travel approximately 20 kilometers above the Earth's surface in the stratosphere. Winds in the stratosphere are stratified, go figure, and each layer of wind varies in speed and direction. Project Loon uses what? Oh, software algorithms to determine where its balloons need to go and then moves each one into a layer of blowing wind in the right direction. What? Oh my God, are these like autonomous algorithm, smart freaking internet balloons in the high stratosphere? This is insane. By moving with the wind, the balloons can be arranged to form one large communication network. The inflatable part of the balloon is called the balloon envelope. A well-made balloon envelope is critical for allowing the balloon to last around 100 days. So every 100 days, are they going to have to replace these? Loon's balloon envelopes are made from sheets of polyethylene plastic, so that'll be really environmentally friendly. And they measure 15 meters wide by 12 meters tall when fully inflated. When the balloon is ready to be taken out of service, gas is released from the envelope to bring the balloon down to Earth in a controlled descent. In the unlikely event that a balloon drops too quickly, a parachute attached to the top of the envelope is deployed. How it connects? Well, each balloon can provide connectivity to a ground area of about 80 kilometers in diameter using a wireless communication technology called LTE. Hey, that's G4, guys. Or 4G, whatever you call it. That's the LTE. To use LTE, Project Loon partners with telecommunications companies to share the cellular spectrum so that people will be able to access the internet anywhere directly from their phones or other LTE-enabled devices. Balloons relay wireless traffic from cell phones and other devices back to the global internet using high-speed links. So there you have it, guys. Google Loon really is 4G cellular technology jacked up into the stratosphere. And we don't know how that's going to affect us. I mean, this is anything above and beyond any type of beaming that we've ever seen. 80 kilometers diameter per balloon. I'm going to drop this in the chat. These will be actually in the notes of the show after it's done. But I'm going to drop both these in chat. The last two stories that we did. So you can see the pretty pictures. They both have pretty pictures. My concern is the unzipping of the DNA. Like I said, because of that CRISPR technology. Now, here's a couple other things that came up in this loon discussion with Zora yesterday. One was, if these things are flying over your property, do we have a right to stop them? How high up into the air do we own? I had mentioned a story that was from a year or two ago where we had some guy being spied on by a drone. And they busted him for, I don't know if it was growing or dealing or whatever, but they said that he was in his yard. And I don't know if he was executing some sort of transaction or just showing someone something, but it pretty much came down to the fact when his lawyer called bullshit because he was on his own property and there was no search warrant for them to be filming him on his own property unwarranted. And the judge ruled that because he was away from his house by so many feet, and I don't remember what the amount was, that it was fair game that they were filming him above his property. Because after so many feet away from the house, there is no expectation of privacy. Well, I'm telling you, if I'm in my yard and I got some peeping Tom asshole standing in the woods behind my house, he better start fucking running if he sees me. I don't even care if he's not in my yard. Okay, that little piss pot is going to have me running with my hands out in front of me. And I'm going to take him by his ear to go find his mother. And do you guys also remember there was another story, speaking of exactly that, where a dad went berserk, and they actually mention it in the story. A dad went berserk because his daughter was in her bikini in the backyard, and a drone flew over the backyard, and he got out his shotgun. They arrested him for it. But it was over his yard, and he says it was spying. All right, let's read this. This was actually from 2 days ago, so this question has come up again very recently. So do your neighbors... So it says, so your neighbors got a new drone for Christmas. Can you stop them from flying it over your house? Well, guess what? Nobody knows. And that's a big problem for the drone industry. On the evening of July 26th, so it was this summer, on the evening of July 26th in Bullitt County, Kentucky, William Meredith's daughter came in from the backyard and told her father that she had just seen a drone flying over the neighborhood. Meredith, 47, walked outside and watched a phantom quadcopter glide down their street and then grabbed his shotgun. And when the drone flew over his property, bam, he blasted it down. Soon, 4 men drove up to Meredith's house, and one of the men, David Boggs, had just bought the drone and said he was demonstrating it to his friends and family. Meredith told local TV news station WDRB that when Boggs and his friends arrived at his place, he warned them and said, if you cross my sidewalk, there's going to be another shooting. Well, that probably wasn't good. And so Boggs, the drone owner, then called 911. And 30 minutes later, the police arrested Meredith. Whoops. The 2 men disagree as to how low Boggs flew his drone over Meredith's backyard. Meredith estimates it's about 100 feet or less, while Boggs says he has data that places it above 200 feet. The drone's exact altitude might not seem crucial, but it is unclear if landowners get to decide who can fly a drone over their property at 100 or even 300 feet, because no one has actually decided yet who owns this slice of airspace. Ding, ding, da, ding. I don't know about you, but if my fence were allowed to go higher than 4 feet and it could go 20,000 feet into the sky where Google's balloons are, it would all be in a big cubicle box called mine. So, hey, I think it's decided I should own to the stratosphere my little plot of land. Because, hey, if I don't pay taxes on it, you take it anyway. I don't know, but then airplanes couldn't fly. So put it to 30,000 feet. You can go over at 30,000 feet. Anyway, so it says it doesn't even matter what the altitude is because no one has actually decided yet who owns this slice of airspace. Whether you're allowed to shoot down a drone hovering over your property is an even more complicated question. But today, thousands of people and businesses across the country are flying drones, and that number is set to explode. The FAA anticipates that this holiday season, people will purchase as many as 1 million drones. Oh, my nightmares are coming true. I'm telling you, when I start hearing the instead of my hummingbirds and my all my songbirds I got sitting out back, I'm going to be a very upset individual. And in an effort to control this flood of flying machines, the FAA announced just this week that it will require recreational drone users to now register their aircraft. But the big question with major implications for the drone industry is far from resolved. Who owns the airspace above private property? And you know, one other thing that came up when we first started talking about this commercialization launch of drones everywhere is that the FAA was giving Google a really hard time. And remember, Google had crossed up the crossed up the Mexican border, crossed up the Canadian border when the FAA was giving Google a hard time for approval. And they said, screw you then. We're going to go do our tests in Canada because the Canadian government will let us go mess around up there and see how it works. And they pretty much forced the FAA on this side because they were dragging their feet too slow to get some approval moving. And I'm sure that there was a lot of congressional butt rubbing and massages going on that got that going. But eventually they did. And I think we read, too, one of their first tests was using delivery drones to deliver vaccines. Do you remember that? Yeah, we've read that story. It was how appropriate. All right. So, the big question, with major implications for the drone industry, is far from resolved. Who owns the airspace above your private property? As Stuart Banner, a University of California, Los Angeles law professor, puts it, quote, drones are forcing people to think about this issue for the first time since airplanes were invented a century ago. Now, this next section, this is out of Scientific American, by the way. This next section is titled, To the Heavens and Down to Hell. And yeah, that's pretty much what I see happening here. Before airplanes and drones existed, people owned everything above and below their land. Now, I did not know that. Because right now, when you buy a piece of property, yes, below the land, there's issues as well. Who owns oil and mineral rights? Who owns timber rights? Who owns water rights? And then below a certain amount, there are mining laws too, where, and I don't remember what the depth is, but I know that there is an area that below a certain depth, you may have a land lease for oil and gas that, you know, starts at 20,000 feet down below or 10,000 feet down below that someday a fracking company could come show up on your property and say, hey, guess what? We want to tap or see if we can tap a well here because here's my lease. I own down 10,000 feet on this plot of land. Bet you didn't know that, did you? So it's all pretty kludgy, but I didn't know that before airplanes that we actually owned everything up and down. We should go back to that. It's all a money-making scheme. Everything. Completely pillage the planet. without any concern for anybody. Anyway, before airplanes and drones existed, people owned everything above and below their land. According to the law, their rights extended, quote, to the heavens and down to hell, unquote. But modern aviation changed this definition in a big way, and in the early 20th century, Congress declared the air a public highway, which limited land rights so that people were not trespassing every time they flew. The public highway has generally been considered 500 feet or above. But airspace from the ground up to 500 feet is a gray area, and no one's ever had to fully settle who owns this airspace. Ask someone at the FAA and they'll tell you that the agency controls, but does not own, the airspace down to the ground. Yet it's clear that the landowners do have some claim to the air. I mean, are we really debating this? Your claim to the air above your property. I mean, the next is going to be literally not just airspace. It's going to be air. You see in China, like they're having such a smog apocalypse right now that they're buying canned air by the millions of cans from Canada. It'll be water next. Everyone agrees that the landowner of the land also owns the airspace above the land, says Banner. Well, good. Maybe up until 4 feet. But there's also the U.S. Supreme Court case involving a chicken farmer. United States versus Cosby. Not Cosby, Cosby, Causby. During World War II, the Army took over a municipal airport and started flying noisy aircraft over Thomas Cosby's land as low as 83 feet, which scared the hell out of his chickens. And 150 of his chickens flew into a wall inside of their coop and they died. So Cosby sued the government, and the court decided in his favor. So the government had to reimburse Cosby for taking, quote unquote, taking of his property, which was the space above his land. The Supreme Court said that landowners have as much as can be used in connection with the enjoyment and the use of the land, says Greg McNeil, a professor of law and public policy at Pepperdine University. In Cosby, it was 83 feet, but it is an open question above that. Till recently, people have had little reason to care what happens in the air above their property. There hasn't been enough going on at low altitudes for them to even notice. But over the past couple years, though, that has begun to change. The FAA has already granted more than 2,000 exemptions to businesses for commercial drone use. Amazon, Google, and Walmart, ding, 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 are among the companies that want to use the flying machines for home delivery. And plenty of Americans dislike the idea of drones flying over their backyards. But is there anything they can do about it? Well, here's an idea that I have. My idea is, how about drones don't fly over any backyards? I don't have cars driving through my backyard. Why don't we make the drones follow the roadways? Simple. Then they fly over the roads. That is public all the way up to infinity. Let's let them go there. I don't want them flying over my backyard. And then when they come in to deliver, they come up my driveway, up my sidewalk, and then they ring my doorbell. If they could do such a thing. And yes, paparazzi, Joe Friday said, everyone, don't forget, we already have the DARPA Argus unmanned aerial high altitude spy drone that has a 1.8 gigapixel camera that can get things like the zit on the end of your nose from 10,000 feet. Anything flying over your yard could be snapping pictures. I mean, are we to trust Google? Google, you can go out to the Google Street Maps and take a look at what was in your garage 6 months ago when they happened to drive by and take pictures of everything. We also found out that a lot of these property local tax assessors in communities are using drones to fly over and start taking pictures of your property. They go, oh, look, you got a new siding on your house and you must have snuck a shed in the corner of the yard. We're now going to raise your taxes. I mean, your privacy is out a window. Not that it wasn't before, but I mean, even more so now. Now they got pictures and they can be chasing you. Infrared cameras. I mean, all this stuff that we've talked about is about to become reality. Today it might be delivering birthday presents to Johnny, but tomorrow? So anyway, Amazon, Google, and Walmart are among the companies that want to use the flying machines for home delivery. And plenty of Americans dislike the idea of drones flying over their backyards. But is there anything they can do about it? Well, because there are no rules to say whether piloting a quadcopter over somebody's property is trespassing, state and local governments have started making their own. In 2013, Oregon passed a state law that lets a landowner sue someone if it catches a person flying a drone below 400 feet over their land more than once without permission. California lawmakers approved a bill this summer for a drone no-fly zone up to 350 feet above private property. And here's the thing though, how are you going to know what 350 versus 400 feet is? Or how are you going to know that this is the second time the same person has flown a drone over your yard? So those feel good past laws. These laws have no teeth. How are you going to prove the height? The city of St. Bonifacius, Minnesota, has actually banned drones from flying in the city airspace below 400 feet, with a few exceptions. And many other cities or towns have passed or considered restrictions. It says, quote, the advent of drones may make the FAA more inclined to press for low-altitude regulations, says California State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson from Santa Barbara, who introduced the now vetoed drone bill. So their drone bill got vetoed. But historically, state and localities have mainly regulated the activities taking place closer to the ground. And here's the thing. So if we've already decided that drones are allowed, and notice in here they don't mention NASA or Verizon or any type of air traffic controlling at all. But there was that new law that just came out this week that they talked about. It was I think Lady Pitbull told me about it. By the way, we have another secret guest coming on Monday. She told me that there was a $20,000 fine now, I believe, if you get caught without having a drone registered. I think within a certain size of the drone, you got to register it. And if it's not registered, there's a hefty fine, which works for me. I'm not planning on flying drones. Says, yet the FAA says it controls the airspace down to the soil, and that authority generally trumps state or local laws. The FAA just released a fact sheet on its views on the state and local drone regulations, in which it stated, quote, a navigable airspace free from inconsistent state and local restrictions. So shame on you, states. Since the feds have done nothing to regulate this except rubber stamp the bullshit, to launch the drones, just like they're doing with everything else. Let's launch AI. Let's launch robotics. Let's launch all this crap and not have any rules for it whatsoever. Hey, let's start mad science gone mad gene editing in all these labs. The Isle of Dr. Moreau, but no ethics laws. No, don't worry about it. We'll deal with it later. So the FAA comes out and says, but you state and local crazies, just because we didn't have anything. Well, now we got to standardize it because you're so inconsistent. We own it all. The agency has now recommended that any states or cities considering laws on restricting drone flight altitude should consult with them first. The FAA hasn't blocked any of the private property restrictions yet, but if it did, state and local governments would probably push back, especially because state law, not federal law, ding ding, determines property rights. And you know what? There's a couple more paragraphs to the story. I'm almost out of time. It says, actually, let's read a little bit more. This could turn into an issue and a major headache for the drone industry. It'll be more difficult for companies to deliver packages to your doorstep with drones if they have to comply with a mismatch of standards that change from state to state. Yes, so poor Amazon will be crying the blues. So just give it all up because they want to start delivering with drones. Johnny's Christmas present, 30 minutes or less, delivered to your door like Domino pizzas. Plus, what if you live in an apartment and you give Amazon permission to deliver a package, but your upstairs neighbor doesn't permit it? If you're Google or Amazon, think about the advantages of just the FAA having authority over all the airspace down to the ground. Oh, yes, let's give it all up to the feds. That's what they want us to do. Then they can fly their drones anywhere they want as long as the FAA gives them permission. And guess what? Hey, Amazon didn't respond to requests for comment, and Google declined to comment. Dun, dun, dun. All right, well, I had one more story that came out yesterday, and we're not going to get to it, but it is about smart meters and frequencies. Let's take a look at how smart meters affect your blood and your blood counts and overall health. And I guess we're going to have to do that next time we're on air. I am not sure if I'm going to be here tomorrow because, well, wait, tomorrow is Christmas. Actually, I will be here tomorrow. I will not be here probably Christmas morning because we're going to do some opening of gifts. But make sure you guys stick around because it is Wednesday. Ms. Lonnie Clark is up next. And then we have Josh and the boys from New York and everything else. All right, guys, have an awesome Wednesday, and I will catch up with you tomorrow. Everyone take care.